There's something strange about how we live our lives. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that selflessness means giving everything we have to everyone around us. Our time, our energy, our attention. We're taught to be there for people, to work hard, to show up, to give 100% every day. And so we do. We pour ourselves into our jobs. We stretch ourselves thin for our families. We go the extra mile for our friends. We're constantly giving, but we rarely stop to ask, what's left for me? That's not a selfish question. It's a responsible one. Because here's the truth no one likes to admit. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And yet, that's exactly what so many people try to do every single day. We try to show up for others when we haven't shown up for ourselves. We try to give when we are depleted. We try to care when we're barely coping. And we tell ourselves that's noble, but it's not. It's unsustainable. Imagine this, you're on a flight, and the safety instructions begin. The flight attendant says, in the event of an emergency, oxygen masks will drop. Place your mask on first before assisting others. Now, we've all heard that line 1,000 times. We probably don't even think about it anymore. But there's a reason they say it, because if you're gasping for air, you're no good to anyone else. The same logic applies to life. Still, so many of us try to be the hero in everyone else's story without realizing we're slowly becoming a ghost in our own. We glorify burnout. We praise exhaustion. We wear stress like a badge of honor. We think that being tired means we're being productive, that being overcommitted means we're important, that if we stop, even for a moment, we'll be left behind. And that fear, the fear of being left behind, pushes us to run faster, do more, stay later, help everyone. Until we break. It doesn't always happen with a loud crash. Sometimes it's quiet. You just start waking up a little less excited. You start smiling a little less sincerely. You stop dreaming. You start dreading. You become reactive instead of intentional. And before you know it, you're not living, you're just managing. What's worse is that nobody notices. Because from the outside, everything looks fine. You're still showing up, still smiling, still performing. But inside, you're running on empty. And the dangerous part is that the world rarely tells you to slow down. In fact, it often rewards you for pushing harder. You'll get applauded for sacrificing yourself. You'll get praised for staying late. You'll be admired for being the one who can handle it all. But being admired isn't the same as being whole. You don't need to be everything to everyone. What you need is to be something to yourself. So ask yourself, when was the last time you checked in with you? Not the version of you that performs, not the one that's needed by others, but the core of who you are, your energy, your peace, your passions, your purpose. If you're feeling drained, if you're starting to lose joy in the things that used to excite you, if you're constantly overwhelmed, maybe it's not because you're doing too little. Maybe it's because you're giving too much of yourself without replenishing. Let's be clear, helping others is a beautiful thing. Being there for your team, your family, your community, that's meaningful, that's purpose-driven. But purpose has to be rooted in strength. And strength comes from care, the kind of care that starts within. The best leaders I've met, the most inspiring people, the ones who truly make an impact, they don't operate from depletion. They operate from alignment. They're deeply connected to who they are. They make space for silence. They carve out time for reflection. They protect their energy. Not because they're selfish, but because they know that the work they do, the lives they touch, deserve the best version of them. And that best version doesn't just happen. It's built. It's nurtured. You don't need a complete life overhaul. Sometimes it's just about small decisions made consistently. Saying no to something that drains you. Saying yes to something that restores you. Taking a walk without your phone. Journaling for 5 minutes in the morning. Protecting one night a week just for you. Giving yourself permission to rest. Not because you've earned it, but because you're human and that's reason enough. But the truth is, no one's coming to remind you to take care of yourself. That responsibility is yours. And the longer you ignore it, the closer you edge toward losing what matters most. Not just your health, but your joy, your clarity, your relationships, your sense of meaning. And by the time you realize it, it may be too late to reclaim what you've given away so freely. So let me ask you something you probably haven't asked yourself in a while. Are you okay? And not the autopilot, I'm fine. I mean, really deep down, are you okay? If the answer is, I don't know, or even not really, then this is your invitation to pause. Not quit, not give up, just pause. Because when you learn to protect your peace, you become someone who can sustain your purpose. When you honor your own needs, you're better equipped to serve the needs of others. When you fill your own cup, you give from a place of wholeness, not obligation. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. So before you give everything away, before you keep pushing without pause, remember this. You are the vessel through which your gifts flow. Take care of the vessel. Focus on yourself, not because you matter more than others, but because if you lose yourself, everything else starts to fall apart. And you are far too valuable to let that happen. You know, we live in a world that constantly asks, what do you do? It's often the first question people ask when they meet you. Not who are you, not what drives you, but what do you do? And somewhere along the way, most of us learn to answer that question with pride. Because we've been conditioned to tie our identity to our output. You start to believe that your worth is measured by how busy you are, how many hours you work, how many accomplishments you can list, how impressive your title sounds when you say it out loud at dinner parties. You start to think that being productive means being valuable, and if you're not doing something, then who even are you? We confuse activity with meaning. We think that the more we do, the more we are. But that's not true. That's just noise. The problem with defining yourself by what you produce is that one day the production slows down, the deadlines pass, the projects finish, the job title changes, the applause fades, and what's left? Who are you when no one is clapping? It's a terrifying question, but it's a necessary one. Because if your sense of self disappears when the performance stops, then it was never really a sense of self at all. It was a costume. A role you played so well that you forgot you were acting. This isn't about abandoning ambition. Ambition is beautiful, progress is necessary, but it's dangerous when your entire identity is held together by external validation. You wake up every day chasing metrics, not meaning. You work to be seen instead of working to be fulfilled. You strive to be liked instead of being whole. And eventually you burn out, not because you're tired from hard work, but because you're exhausted from not being yourself. We all want to matter. We all want to be valued. But the question we often avoid is by who and for what? If the only time you feel valuable is when someone praises your performance, then what happens when no one's watching? And what happens when life slows down? What happens when things go wrong? Because they inevitably do. And suddenly your output doesn't look impressive. Do you stop being valuable then? Of course not. You are not your achievements. You are not your resume. You are not your productivity. You are not your best day at work or your worst one. You are something deeper. Something that doesn't need applause to exist. Something that still matters even when it's quiet. The most grounded people I've met are not the ones who've accomplished the most on paper. They're the ones who know exactly who they are when everything external is stripped away. They're not just proud of what they do, they're proud of who they are while doing it. They show up with intention, not performance. They know their value isn't dependent on how many things they've checked off their list that day. Their peace isn't built on productivity, it's built on presence. And it starts with this shift. Instead of asking yourself, what more can I do? Try asking, who am I becoming? It's a harder question, but it's the only one that leads to long-term fulfillment. You'll never regret hard work when it's aligned with your values, but you will regret building a version of yourself that's successful on the outside and hollow on the inside. And this isn't just personal, it's professional too. I've worked with leaders who are highly accomplished and deeply insecure. They've spent their entire lives trying to prove their worth through success. They chase the next promotion, the next project, the next win. But they're not driven by joy, they're driven by fear. Fear of slowing down, fear of not being needed, fear of discovering that they don't know who they are without the work. And the people around them feel it. Because when a leader doesn't know who they are beyond the work, they become reactive, defensive, unpredictable. They lead from insecurity instead of vision. They micromanage because they don't trust. They burn out their teams because they're burned out themselves. But when you're rooted in who you are, when you know your identity exists before your output, everything changes. You lead differently, you love differently, you live differently. You become less concerned with being impressive and more focused on being impactful. You become less attached to outcomes and more invested in the process. You start measuring success not just by what you achieve, but by how aligned your achievements are with your values, and most importantly, you begin to treat yourself with kindness even when things don't go as planned. Because that's the real test. Not how you feel about yourself when you win, but how you treat yourself when you lose. The truth is, you were worthy the day you were born. No title gave you value, no award increased your worth, and no failure can take it away. That's not sentimental, that's foundational. So yes, work hard, build something, pursue greatness, but don't lose yourself in the process. You don't need to earn your right to rest. You don't need to justify your existence with a to-do list. You don't need to keep proving something that was already true. You matter before the performance, during the process, and even after the applause fades. So if you've been measuring your identity by your output, maybe it's time to pause. Not to stop doing great things, but to remember that you're already someone great even before you do them. Somewhere along the line, we were taught to believe that saying yes makes us good people. That availability equals value. That the more we give our time, our energy, our presence, the more we prove our loyalty, our love, our leadership. And for a while that works. People appreciate you, they rely on you, they trust you. You become the go-to person, the dependable one, the fixer, the peacemaker, the friend who always picks up the phone. But then something happens. You start to feel tired. Not just physically, but emotionally. You find yourself saying yes before you even pause to consider whether you want to. You show up when you don't have the energy to show up. You stretch beyond your capacity, and you do it with a smile. Because that's what's expected. Except behind the smile, you're running on fumes. And that's where resentment begins to grow, not because others are asking, but because you haven't learned how to say that's enough. We think that boundaries push people away, but in truth, boundaries are the very thing that allow us to stay close without losing ourselves. They are not a sign of rejection. They are a sign of responsibility. Responsibility for your time, your energy, your peace of mind. Because without boundaries, what you end up giving isn't generosity, it's obligation. And there's a big difference between giving out of love and giving because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't. The most meaningful relationships, whether personal or professional, aren't built on constant availability. They're built on mutual respect. And respect means being able to say, I care about you and I also care, but that's hard, isn't it? We fear that if we say no, we'll disappoint someone, that they'll feel rejected, that we'll be seen as selfish or unkind. So instead of having honest conversations, we avoid them. We say yes with our mouths and no with our hearts. We agree outwardly and crumble inwardly, and then we wonder why we feel overwhelmed, disconnected, or even a little lost. You cannot live a healthy life if you're constantly abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. You cannot lead others effectively if you're constantly violating your own values in the name of harmony. Boundaries don't say, I don't care about you. They say, I care about both of us. They say, I know what I need to be at my best, and I trust you enough to let you know what that looks like. Think about it. We set boundaries for children, not to control them, but to protect them. We set boundaries in sports, not to limit play, but to create fair and safe conditions. We even set boundaries in nature. Park signs that say, stay on trail, or do not feed the animals. Those boundaries aren't there to take away freedom. They exist to preserve it. Yet when it comes to our own lives, we hesitate. We apologize for needing rest. We feel guilty for turning down an invitation. We feel selfish for carving out space for ourselves. But if you don't protect your time, someone else will decide how it gets spent. If you don't define your limits, others will keep pushing them. Not because they're malicious, but because people treat you the way you train them to. And every time you say yes when you mean no, you're training them. You're teaching them that your needs come second, that your time isn't valuable, that your silence means consent, that your energy is limitless. But it's not. And when you hit the wall, and you will, no one's going to understand how you got there, because from the outside, everything looked fine. This isn't about building walls or pushing people away. This is about creating clarity. People can only honor the lines you draw when they know where those lines are. That clarity removes confusion, it builds trust, it fosters better communication, and over time, it actually deepens connection. Because people feel safe when they know where they stand. The truth is, people don't respect boundaries you never express. And you can't be upset with people for crossing lines you never drew. Boundaries require courage. They require uncomfortable conversations. They require the willingness to disappoint someone in the short term to preserve the relationship in the long term. And that discomfort, that's the cost of self-respect. You won't always get it right. There will be times you go too far or not far enough. Times when you overcorrect, times when you cave, that's okay. Boundaries aren't about being perfect. They're about being intentional. The first step is to pause. Notice where your energy is going. Notice what you're agreeing to that feels out of alignment. Pay attention to the moments when you say yes and immediately feel regret. Those are signals, your body's way of saying, this isn't right. And then practice. Start small. A polite no, a delayed reply, a canceled plan. Not because you're avoiding life, but because you're building it on purpose. When you start to set boundaries, people might resist. Some may get upset. That's normal. Because they're adjusting to the new version of you. The version that doesn't say yes out of fear, the version that honors your time, the version that protects your peace, the version that values connection, not codependency. And the people who truly care about you, they'll get it. They may not understand it immediately, but they'll come to respect it because they'll see how grounded, present, and whole you become. Boundaries are not barriers to love. They're the framework that allows love to flourish without resentment. They are the guardrails that protect your integrity, your clarity, your joy. And the beautiful thing is this: once you learn to honor your own boundaries, you also become better at respecting others. You listen more, you assume less. You lead with empathy because you've learned firsthand what it means to show up without losing yourself. So the next time you're tempted to say yes just to keep the peace, ask yourself, at what cost? If the cost is your well-being, your time, your truth, maybe that's a price you don't need to pay, because a life without boundaries isn't love. It's erosion. And you're not here to slowly disappear. You are here to live fully, honestly, and freely. There's a moment in life when you look around and realize not everyone who's with you is truly for you. It's a hard lesson to learn, but an essential one. Because while we all crave connection, not all connection is healthy. While we all want to be liked, not all company is good company. The truth is, not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. And yet we often let them sit there anyway. Why? Because we're wired for belonging. We want to be accepted. We want to be included. We want to avoid conflict. So we tolerate people who drain us, belittle us, take advantage of us. Because we're afraid of what might happen if we don't. We're afraid of being alone. We're afraid of being judged. We're afraid of being labeled as selfish or cold or arrogant. But here's the irony. Keeping people in your life who don't genuinely support you is the loneliest feeling in the world. You're surrounded by people, but you feel unseen. You're talking, but you're not heard. You're giving but not receiving. And over time you begin to shrink, you lower your standards, you start to question your worth, you give people access to your life without asking the one question that matters most: have they earned it? Because access is a privilege, not a right. Your energy is sacred. Your time is limited. Your attention is valuable. And when you give those things away freely, without discernment, you pay the price. The people closest to you should inspire you, challenge you, respect you, support you. They should hold you accountable, not hold you back. But if you're not intentional about who you surround yourself with, you'll start to reflect the noise around you. You'll begin to internalize their doubts, absorb their fears, carry their judgments. And without even realizing it, your life starts to revolve around other people's opinions, not your own convictions. That's not leadership, that's survival. And survival doesn't lead to growth, it leads to resentment. We often keep people close because of history, not harmony. I've known them for years. They've always been around. They're family. Those are real reasons, but they're not always good ones. Just because someone has been part of your past doesn't mean they deserve to shape your future. You don't need to cut people off in anger. You don't need to hold grudges. This isn't about being better than anyone. It's about being better for yourself. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is create distance, not out of hate, but out of clarity. Not to punish, but to protect. Think about your life like a theater. The stage is where you perform, where you live, where you grow. The front row, that's where your most trusted people sit. The ones who clap when you win and lift you up when you fall. The ones who aren't threatened by your success, the ones who don't compete with you, don't belittle you, don't pretend to cheer while secretly hoping you'll fail. They are for you, genuinely, consistently. But often we let critics sit in the front row. We let the jealous, the toxic, the manipulative sit too close. We give them our attention. We take their words to heart. We let their doubt become our hesitation. We let their judgment become our silence. Why? Because deep down, we still hope to win them over. But here's the hard truth. Some people don't want to be won over. Some people aren't capable of loving you in the way you need to be loved. Some people will never be able to see you clearly because they're too clouded by their own pain, ego, or insecurity. And it's not your job to fix that. You can love someone and still choose to love them from afar. You can care about someone without giving them access to the most vulnerable parts of you. You can wish someone well without inviting them into your daily life. That's not cold, that's wisdom. You only have so much emotional real estate, and the people you allow close to you directly impact your mindset, your peace, your direction. If we're constantly surrounded by doubt, drama, or disconnection, it becomes almost impossible to live with clarity, confidence, or purpose. You owe it to yourself to curate your circle. Not to create an echo chamber, but to create a foundation of trust and truth. It starts by asking, who lifts me up? Who drains me? Who challenges me to be better? Who secretly wants me to stay small? Who celebrates my growth? And who makes me feel guilty for changing? Don't just look at who's been there the longest. Look at who's been there right. Sometimes the right people aren't the loudest. They're not always the ones shouting your name from the rooftop. Sometimes they're quiet, consistent, loyal, steady. They show up, they listen, they speak truth when it's hard, they remind you of who you are when you forget. Those are the people who deserve front row seats. And once you identify them, protect that space, guard it fiercely, because the quality of your life will never exceed the quality of the relationships you keep closest. This doesn't mean you stop being kind. It doesn't mean you burn bridges. It means you stop putting everyone else's comfort above your own alignment. It means you stop auditioning for people who are never meant to understand your role. And it means you finally realize you don't need a packed theater. You need the right audience. So take a look around your life. Who's sitting in your front row? If they're not cheering for you with love, truth, and consistency, it's okay to move them back a few rows. You're not rejecting them, you're reclaiming yourself. And that, more than anything, is what it means to focus on yourself before you lose everything. Because when your circle is strong, your spirit is stronger. And with the right people beside you, there's nothing you can't face. At some point, many of us start chasing applause, not because we're vain, not because we're arrogant, but because we're human. We want to feel seen, we want to feel validated, we want to know we matter. And applause, whether it's literal or metaphorical, feels like proof. It feels like evidence that we're doing something right. So we push ourselves. We work harder. We do more. We polish our image. We perform. And when the crowd claps, it feels good for a while. But what happens when the clapping stops? What happens when the likes don't come? When the compliments dry up? When no one notices what you did? That's when it hits you. Applause is fleeting. It's conditional. It comes and goes with people's opinions, attention spans, moods. And if your sense of fulfillment is tied to applause, then your peace will always be at risk. Because now you're living for noise, not for meaning. But real success, deep, lasting, unshakable success isn't loud, it's quiet. It's not something you broadcast, it's something you feel. Peace is the real success. And peace doesn't show up on stage, it shows up in the moments after. It's what you feel when you're alone with your thoughts and still feel whole. It's waking up without dread. It's going to sleep without regret. It's the ability to sit in silence without needing to be distracted. It's walking through life knowing you're not pretending, that you're not performing, that you're not chasing a version of success that looks good on the outside but feels empty on the inside. The trouble is, most of us aren't taught to value peace. We're taught to value appearance, recognition. We're taught to compete, to win, to climb, to conquer. And when we get the job or the title or the milestone, we expect to feel fulfilled. But sometimes we get there and realize we're more anxious, more disconnected, more restless than we were before. Because you can't substitute external success for internal alignment. You can't buy peace with a paycheck. You can't inherit it through status. You can't earn it through overachievement. Peace is the byproduct of integrity, of living in alignment with your values, of doing work that matters to you, not just work that impresses others, of having boundaries that protect your energy, of relationships that are safe, not just exciting, of knowing that you don't have to prove your worth every single day to deserve rest, love, or belonging. It's easy to get applause. Just say what people want to hear. Do what's trendy. Don't rock the boat. Keep the peace externally, even if it's costing you internally. That'll keep the noise going. But peace, that takes courage. Because peace often comes from choosing the harder path. Saying no to the opportunity that isn't right for you. Stepping away from relationships that are familiar but no longer healthy. Admitting that your ladder might be leaning against the wrong wall. Letting go of the story that says your value is tied to your productivity, your popularity, your profile. Sometimes peace looks like disappointing others to be honest with yourself. Sometimes it means slowing down when everyone else is speeding up. Sometimes it means leaving the stage entirely, not because you've failed, but because you finally realize you don't need it to feel complete. And that's scary. Because applause is addictive. It gives you a hit of significance. It makes you feel like you matter. But what if I told you that your value has never been up for debate? That you were born with it? That no amount of clapping can increase it, and no amount of silence can diminish it? That's the kind of truth that leads to peace. When you no longer need to perform to feel worthy, you start living from a different place. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop seeking validation from people who are never qualified to give it. You stop trying to fit into boxes you've outgrown just because they're familiar. And you begin to live a life that's yours. That's where peace lives, in ownership. Not in pretending to be further along than you are. Not in looking like you have it all together. But in the quiet confidence of knowing that you're walking your path even if no one's clapping. The most successful people I've met are not always the wealthiest or the most well-known. They're the ones who've made peace their priority. They're grounded, centered, present. They know who they are when no one's watching. They don't need to win every argument, attend every event, or please every critic. They're not living to impress, they're living to impact. And they do it from a place of wholeness, not hunger. You can chase applause your entire life and still go to bed restless. Or you can chase peace and finally feel at home in your own skin. That doesn't mean you stop pursuing excellence. It means you stop letting excellence be defined by how loud the world claps. You start asking deeper questions. Am I living with integrity? Am I aligned with my values? Am I growing in a way that honors my mental, emotional, and spiritual health? Success is not how high you climb if you lose yourself on the way up. Success is coming home to yourself, fully, unapologetically, and with peace in your heart. So ask yourself this: when the noise fades, what remains? Because applause will come and go, but peace? Peace is what stays. Peace is what holds you steady in the storm. Peace is what reminds you that you're enough even when no one's watching. Peace is the real success. Don't wait until you've lost everything to realize it.